So I was talking to one of our employees today. They do cold calling. And something I mentioned to them whenever they do this cold calling is you want to be sure to frame, okay? Remember that word throughout this video, frame. And I'll probably repeat it tons of times. Frame, 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 frame. You want to understand how to frame an offering a certain way to what it is that person does. And framing goes not just in sales, but I mean, framing is pretty much, yeah, it's in a lot of things that we do in our everyday lives, the way you frame something. You have to frame something a certain way to your spouse, right? Because if you don't frame it a certain way, she might take it a completely wrong way. To my married ones, you know what I'm talking about. To my couples, you also know what I'm talking about. To the men and the women that have been through a lot of relationships, you definitely know what I'm talking about, okay? So how you frame something is absolutely important. So I'll use an example, the one that I used today on the cold calling. So we are simply marketing to getting doctors, like plastic surgeons, in high-end press outlets, right? So PR, public relations. So for framing it, this is how you would go about it. Instead of saying, Dr. Nate all the time, make sure you clarify about their plastic surgery practice, because then you understand and you're being specific. Understand the lingo that they use. Understand the terminology that they use. If someone would call me and said that they wanted to feature me in some kind of article for press purposes, and they just let in with, hey, we want to feature Nate because he has a podcast, I might be like, okay, yeah, tell me more about it a little bit, but I'll still be a little hesitant, a little stubborn. But if they come at me and they're like, yeah, we want to feature Nate in an article that showcases his interview that he did with world-renowned DJ Clinton Sparks, because we saw that he talked about the fact that having faith is, right, blah, blah, blah. And when I hear that, even if I realize that I might have to pay for it, I'm going to be more receptive to that. And the reason being is because they framed it that way. But most importantly, they did the research. In order for you to frame something a particular way, a lot of times you have to do your research. And when I realize somebody does research on me, I respect them even more. It's kind of like, wow, I look at you as a friend compared to just some like acquaintance. Like, hi, nice to meet you. It's like, hey, what's up, man? How you been? Like, bring it in, right? And it's all about how can you frame something to make it extremely friendly and just welcoming to that person. There's tons of books about dating relationships, especially like, gaming. Right? If a guy's trying to game a girl, I mean, you've heard of the book called The Game, another one called Mystery Method, and there's tons of ways like, different pickup artists use to go about it, but a lot of the times it's framing it a certain way. They have a strategy behind that. So whether you're in business, how can you frame your offering? How can you frame your services a certain way? So whenever you not just do cold calls, but whenever you're talking to somebody, it's not just some kind of cold connection or some cold meeting. It's an extremely warm connection, and for the first time, they feel like they know you. That's been huge to our success, to my success with what I've been able to do, because I literally frame it a certain way. Like if I realize that they say bro a lot, I'll say bro. They call that mirroring, but I call that more so reciprocating a little bit, where it's not weird, right? Because then it can get a little weird if you do the same exact thing like all the time. You got to know when to say things a proper way. Like I'll say brother to somebody if they're more professional. I'll say bro to somebody if they're kind of like if I'm doing business with them, but if it's more so from a standpoint of that friend thing in a way, right? So understand where in your life right now should framing be taking place where it lacks. Maybe it's your business. Maybe it's your relationship. Maybe it's in your job. You want to hit a quota? Okay, well, how can you frame the quota that you're trying to hit properly so you can hit it every single month, so you can become the top in your industry and the top in your job, right? You want to be promoted. Hey, I used to work in Dick's Sporting Goods. I worked retail, and we had to hit a certain quota for getting like credit cards done. And it was all about framing it a certain way. Fun fact, I always finished last because I didn't care about that. I didn't care about it because I didn't care about getting somebody a credit card for Dick's Sporting Goods, because what the heck did I benefit from it? Oh, Nate, you're going to get promoted. What, like a couple of bucks? That was my mentality. If you're like that, that's great, right? You can still continue to progress and move up. But for me personally, I'm telling you from my experience, I'm like, man, I don't really care about that. Like a few dollars. Trying to make a few hundred extra dollars. So understand the power of framing. It's very important. You can make a lot of money, but most importantly, you can gain a ton of connections by framing properly. Mark my words.